mode.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ronalyn with Hawaii's Better Business Bureau, and welcome to our webinar on mobile cloud computing. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few things to help you get the most out of this presentation. You should see two windows on your screen, the presentation window and the control panel in the upper right corner. To enlarge and minimize the control panel, click the black arrows on the upper right corner of your screen where you can adjust your audio settings and send your questions. We will answer questions after the webinar. Our guest speaker today is Attila Saris, whose background is in statistics and database design, but his ongoing passion is using technology to help others succeed in business. His accomplishments include having been the COO for Wildgate Wireless, a mainland telecommunications carrier, where he built and managed a staff and statewide data network. He later helped to pioneer the Best Buy Kick Squad business pilot program, where he established a presence in the Hawaii business community. He is currently the owner of SOS Tech Solutions and directs company projects out of the Manoa Innovation Center. You may recognize him from speaking engagements or appearances on the KHNL Morning News or his weekly Think Tech Friday TV show. He enjoys talking at events and spending time with his wife and two children. Without further ado, please, I'll hand it over to Mr. Attila Saris.
Oh, good morning, and thank you, Ronalyn, for that introduction. And yes, my name is Attila Saris. I am the founder of SOS Tech Solutions, and I help companies with 5 to 50 computers use technology to be more strategic in their business and improve profitability. Today, I'm going to share with you how you can take advantage of mobile and cloud computing to cut your IT costs, eliminate waste, improve productivity, and make it easier for you and your staff to work remotely, all the while protecting yourself against security breaches, litigation, rogue employees, and cyber criminals. But what I'm really excited about today is to give you technology ideas that you can start implementing today that can increase your bottom line and improve profits. Now, I know that you're likely on this webinar because you're already using mobile devices in your organization in some manner and want to know what you should be doing to protect yourself from lost and stolen devices, cyber threats, rogue employees, and regulatory actions being taken against you, or you're just thinking about using cloud and mobile technology but want to make sure that it's the right choice for you. And ultimately, I know that a number of you at some point are going to be faced with a network refresh. In fact, Microsoft has already discontinued the sale of its small business server, otherwise known as SBS, so the option of hosting your own smaller Exchange server is no longer available. So if you currently rely on such a platform, you will eventually need to upgrade to Office 365 or Google hosted apps, whether you like it or not. Look, at the end of the day, I want to fill my life's goal, which is to help people with technology. So let me share what I know to help you and your company use the cloud to work better, smarter, and improve your bottom line. Now, the best place to start, jump to the next slide, Ronalyn. Ronalyn, are you there? There we go. We're going to go to the next slide here. There we go. Too fast. There we go. Let's start with a story. Now, this is a traditional Japanese story. I heard it in my business group, and it goes something like this. So a man takes his son with him, each to the edge of a raging river, and they each cast a stone into the water in the same place every time, day after day. Each time a stone was cast, the man told his son that they were changing the direction of the river. The son didn't understand. After all, this was a raging, powerful river. What could one stone do? Many years later, when the boy had grown into a man, he returned to his ancestral village and visited the river and stood in the spot that he and his father had frequented so many years before. He was surprised to discover that all those small stones they had cast many years ago had indeed changed the direction of the raging water. It had now flowed in a different direction, down a hill, and gave fresh water to another village below. My point to you is this. This webinar, if you take it to heart, can be a large stone you cast into a river. A stone that can not only change the direction of your organization, but can help you provide better products and services to your customers and to your community. So let me ask you 3 quick questions. One, how many of you are already using mobile devices right now? And do you feel really confident that you've got those devices locked down, protected from a security standpoint, and that the data on them is backed up properly and completely in the event that one is lost or stolen? Second question I have for you. How many of you are facing a network refresh within the next 8 months? And 3, are you thinking about introducing mobile devices and some sort of cloud solution, but you really want more information about this first? Now, if you answered yes to any of these questions, you'll be really glad you tuned in today, because we're going to cover all of this and more. And specifically, we're going to start with what cloud computing is in simple terms. I'm going to help you understand it. And even if you've heard of this kind of stuff before, I guarantee you there may be points that you've missed, finer points that can really make a difference to you. I want to talk about how it can give you instant disaster recovery, a significant increase in productivity, and in the end, the most important thing, which is lower your IT costs and give you more value for your organization. Second point is, I want to talk about the pros and cons about choosing computing over this server in the closet. The server in the closet, of course, are those servers and computers that are maybe sitting there in the corner. They're aging and they're making a lot of noise. And one thing you may not know is they're actually costing you quite a bit of money in electricity itself just to keep them running. So there's a lot of factors that go into actually running a server, and there are more efficient alternatives out there for you. And of course, a network upgrade or refresh, what that means is that the computers and kind of organizational tools that you may be using today, maybe they work really well, but there could be some better choices out there for you. And by learning from case studies and other people who have done these kind of network refreshes, it may give you some ideas that can inspire you to make some changes. Next point we're going to go over is how to choose the right mobile devices for you and your employees to work remotely. Mobile's huge, mobile's hot, mobile is sexy. Everyone loves the new mobile device, and we're going to talk about some of those, and I really want to share what I know about them and help you make some better decisions. And then, of course, critical policies, procedures, and protections that every business must have in place now. Some of those are written, some of those are software, some of those are just procedural, and those things should be implemented first before allowing employees and others to run out the door with critical company data. We're also going to cover, let's see here, we got a stuck slide, here we go. New legal issues. Now, of course, the world around us changes technologically, and sometimes the legal system takes a moment to catch up, and those kind of things may come to affect you, and so we're going to look at some things that have happened recently that can help you make some better decisions about what kind of behaviors you should change in your organization to better protect yourself. And of course, I'm always available to answer questions. I want to make sure I'm available to you. And at the end of this presentation, we're going to have a few minutes to go through questions. So go ahead and, while I'm talking, put them down on a Post-it pad or put it in your Evernote, and then we'll address them at the end of the presentation. But I really want to give you the true lesson. The true lesson of today, the most important thing is, I want you to be smart, strategic, and intentional with your IT decisions. IT is just technology in general. It's going to cover software, it's going to cover physical devices, it's going to cover procedures, and the idea is I want you to maximize your profits. I really want to help Hawaii's business community make more money. IT is a good way to do that. So think about productivity. That's a result. Think about growth. That's also a result of changing your behaviors. And I really want you to minimize waste and reduce your exposure to risk. Now, of course, the opposite of that is taking a random and haphazard approach. And this is some of the things that I see going into businesses, is that they are taking a random and haphazard approach. And businesses have mobile and cloud technologies leak into their organization bit by bit, not done with any strategic intention, and because of that, they're exposing themselves to unnecessary risk. Not being intentional, not being strategic, the reality of this is that most of you are already using cloud computing and already have employees using mobile devices to work. It's a trend that's not showing any signs of slowing down. However, most of you are adding on these things in an ad hoc, haphazard way instead of being smart and strategic about it. So because of that, you could be making expensive mistakes and exposing yourself to problems down the road. So here's my carrot. I've got a special bonus that I'm going to make available to you at the end of the session. It's a free in-person strategic IT planning session exclusively for EBB members and attendees of this webinar. And as an added bonus, there's a mobile device policy that you can fill in the blanks and use for your business today. Together, the consult and template is something we normally charge $500 for, so make sure you hang around until the very end, and we'll talk about how you can get that for your organization. There we go. Now, those of you who, before we get rolling, I know that there are some of you here that I haven't met or don't know my name. So for these folks, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Attila, and I'm a veteran IT specialist. I've been doing this all my life, and my focus has been on developing technology solutions and systems that improve efficiency and peace of mind for small to medium-sized businesses. I've worked with Hawaii businesses since 2006, and I also worked for Best Buy's Geek Squad Business Technology Division on Oahu. We got that launched. A lot of fun. I've had a regular spot on the KHNL Morning Show. I've also been a regular host for Think Tech Studios' Friday TV show. And I'm really proud of having a 100% client success rate. And what that means is that what we do for them improves their business in some way. But I wanted to start by talking about the evolution of IT. And IT, of course, is information technology, and give you a brief history of how it's evolved and help you understand where the cloud computing environment that we live in today came from. Now, in the 1960s, we had the birth of the mainframe computer, and if I have mouse control, you're going to see it down here. I can start at the left. Now, the mainframe computer, I'll go back one. Now, the mainframe computer, IBM was the kingpin in the 60s, and my grandmother personally, she worked for Ampex Corporation. They did data processing with these huge IBM computers, and I grew up, with these punch cards that I would, write on with crayons and little markers and such. And you'll see an example of a punch machine down there in the left-hand corner. And that's not my grandma, by the way, but I did find that image online. But that kind of shows you where it was in the 60s. Now, moving on into the 70s and 80s, that's when these companies like Microsoft and Apple were born. Their mission until recently for both Apple and Microsoft were to put a desktop computer inside of every home in America. They reached that goal, and now they have a new goal, but that was their grand vision in the 70s and 80s. And moving on into the 90s, that's when the personal computers really started to get some traction. We started seeing some dial-up internet services such as America Online and Earthlink. Those were really cool in its day, and they had their time and place. But in the early 2000s, and that's where wired internet made the most difference here. So that's right here. We're in the 2000s. So wired internet meant that we started to see, and this started coming in around the late 90s. We had these ISDN lines, which are like high-speed data dial-up lines. DSL started becoming more affordable. Cable internet started coming in, and we started to see technology platforms take advantage of this new higher speed bandwidth. So YouTube is the first one that comes to mind, and believe it or not, YouTube is only just over 10 years old. So it's not a very old company. Facebook, Twitter, these social media sites haven't been around that long either. YouTube's been kind of the grandfather in that pack. And they're taking advantage of these higher speed data connections that really start coming in. Now, in the late 2000s, so within the last 5 years, now mobile internet has really changed. and probably the biggest game changer. I mean, obviously everyone likes to point at Apple, but Apple does not consist of 100% of all mobile devices. 70+% of them are Android based, and Android is an operating system that was purchased by Google in I think it was 2010 or 2011, and they picked up that operating system and decided, just like Microsoft did, to take an operating system and stick it onto different pieces of hardware. And I support that model. I think that's very innovative, it's very smart, and a model like that means that LG can make a smartphone. It means that Samsung can make a smartphone. It means that all these other players can go out, make smartphones, put this Android operating system on there, and then have them tie into this this marketplace, this Google store. So just like how Apple has its App Store, Google now has its Play Store, and that has been pushing the use of apps. And this is really important because at the end of this slide you'll see that cloud computing is up here. And cloud computing takes advantage of apps. Apps are kind of everything. The idea is that cloud computing, it shares information and communication. It changes how we work, and the operating system now, where we are today, has kind of become irrelevant. Whether you use an Apple product or an Android product doesn't really matter. If you have any sort of internet access, and now we even have high-speed internet access over the airwaves that's very cheap, you can pretty much work from anywhere and have that data available anywhere. So of course, when everything starts to become available anywhere at high speed wherever you are, now it gets interesting. It becomes a game changer. Now the idea behind our next slide here, I have a bit of a delay, is I wanted to give you an idea as to why the trend has moved towards cloud computing from an on-premise network. Now, an on-premise network means that there are servers and equipment that are buzzing away in your closet, making lots of noise, using up lots of electricity, and the kind of considerations you should make in your organization when you are thinking about moving to the cloud or retiring some of that older equipment and putting something new in place, because it can be scary. This chart is probably a good place to start here. So the idea is that there's an IT infrastructure consideration. So in the cloud, there's no physical IT infrastructure you need to worry about. It's all just in the cloud. And the cloud being, of course, a bunch of servers out there connected to the internet. One goes down, you don't have to worry about it. Your data, your applications, everything is safe. Now if it's on-premise, obviously if we have a power outage or if there's any sort of physical equipment failure, you're at risk. The second consideration here is access. Typically, most companies have their most protected data available, on-site, or you have to have some very expensive solution in place, such as Citrix or remote desktop, terminal services, whatever, that allow your employees to jump in there remotely, and it ends up becoming more of a management issue. Now, once in the cloud, it's either app-based, web browser-based, or mobile device-based. It kind of cuts out all that headache that needs to go in between. In terms of costs, cloud, it goes based off of a pay-as-needed model. And we're going to go through that in a minute with some upcoming slides. But the idea is that you only pay for what you need. And that makes it very attractive to startups. So startups all use cloud-based applications because they don't need to go out and buy all this physical equipment to keep things up and running. But those established organizations who have that kind of expenditure, they're okay with spending the money. Sometimes they prefer to go with an on-premise network just for peace of mind. But at the end of the day, it ends up becoming more of a management issue than it would be if it was just straight to the cloud. In terms of workforce, retailers, those with high turnover or seasonal workers, having a pay-as-you-go model means that a cloud solution can expand and contract based on your needs. If you have 50 employees, one part of the year, and then 150 another part of the year, the cloud model allows you to contract that workforce and the resources needed for them, and then expand it as needed. Now, in terms of office setup, if you want to have a remote office, that's fine. The cloud allows you to do that very easily. It allows you to have workers in the field, technicians in the field, no problem, versus an on-premise network where you have to have somebody on site, you have to have the servers powered up, and even if they can work remotely, the available bandwidth isn't as much. So that becomes a consideration. And of course, ongoing support services, that's a big one. You know, I'm in the IT services industry. If I wanted to sell you something, I tell you, yeah, buy tons and tons of equipment on site, because that would give us lots of things to fix. You know, that's a very mechanics mentality. Well, you know, I'm telling you that right now cloud requires a lot less service and maintenance, and that makes it very attractive to business owners. And of course, there are some hybrid cloud solutions. We're going to talk about that you know, soon. But you know, another very important consideration when it comes to cloud is typically software life cycle is longer. What that means is that once you jump into a cloud solution, you're on a subscription model. So you are paying per month to use this software, and that's it. Now, when you decide to do something in-house, such as Microsoft Office, for example, you're going to be refreshing Microsoft Office every few years, or at least I hope you will, because there are new features and services that come with newer versions of Microsoft Office that you cannot take advantage of with an older version. A cloud solution for Microsoft Office, on the contrast, allows you to just pay a flat monthly fee, and you continue to get newer versions of Microsoft's Office, Word and Excel and so on, as long as you pay the fee each month. So those upgrade costs go away. Kind of cool. Now, in terms of implementation time, the cloud is actually pretty quick. You can turn things on, turn things off pretty quickly and easily. I like it. But in terms of on-premise stuff, it takes a little bit longer, a little bit more specialized knowledge, and that can be one consideration. And of course, backup and disaster recovery, huge, 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 especially considering where we live. We're on an island. We're the most isolated landmass on Earth. We're bound to get hit with something. As you know, our power situation here is much to be desired. Our internet situation here is not up to the same standards as we have on the mainland. You know, we have unique challenges. That's fine. Using the cloud allows you to circumvent some of those. Now, obviously, there are going to be some downsides to this, but overall, you can sleep better at night knowing that your data is safe. So, without getting too technical, let me explain what cloud computing is by using an analogy that everyone can understand. So, the internet and cloud computing is to computing what the electrical grid and the electric company is to plugging in your rice maker. So what that essentially means is when you need your rice maker, you plug it in, you can use it. When you're done, you unplug it, you're done. So cloud computing is following the same technological revolution that electricity followed as a utility roughly 150 years ago. And let me tell you a little bit about that. I think you'll find this really interesting. So in the early 1800s, companies, and this was largely factories, were required to produce their own power to operate a number of tools and machines they used to produce their products. And in 1851, one of the most advanced systems was created by an ironworks factory by a man named Henry Burden. It was called Burden Ironworks, and if you Google that, you'll see that the factory stands today. This wheel does not, but in 1851, they finished the largest and most powerful industrial water wheel in human history. So, biggest ever, right? And you know, top speed, this giant 600-foot, 250-ton, enormous, monstrous thing could produce 500 horsepower, and that generated enough electricity to power their tools. Now, to give you an idea of scale, I'm not sure if you noticed, but there's actually a little man right here, down there. So huge, really big water wheel. And you know what? I was actually watching Discovery Channel a few weeks ago, and they're discovering that the Romans really took advantage of water in the same way that we do today. They had huge water wheels that that would take advantage of this sort of electricity and create kinetic kinetic drives for their kind of things. But the idea is that a single water wheel of this size has never been created in human history. And George Washington Ferris, observed this construction while he was going to university. So you can kind of imply that Burton's wheel inspired him to later invent the Ferris wheel, and that's, of course, something we all know and love today. So, what would you guess happened to Burton's wheel? I'll tell you. The idea is that the invention of electricity as a utility, it was a game changer for factories. So companies no longer had to produce their own power, and that eliminated a huge expense for them. So it very quickly became a competitive necessity to tap into the cheaper electrical grid than to produce it on your own. So 50 years later, this huge water wheel was sitting in a field rusting away, abandoned, done. And my point to you is that most of you are already using cloud computing today. It's already done with. So this technological revolution is happening today. And let me tell you about my typical day and see if you can relate. Now, the world that we live in is driven by apps. So when I wake up, my iPad, I turn it on, I check my email on my iPad. Cool, that's an app. During breakfast, I look at my social media feed, Facebook and Twitter, Hawaii News Now Online. Those are 3 more apps. On the way to the office, I listen to a podcast. That's another app. And at work, I use Skype, I use IM, more apps on my iPad. And at the end of the day, when I come home, I turn on Pandora for the kids, and it's great during bath time. They listen to music, very happy. And then after the kids are asleep, I turn on Netflix and look at some movies. The idea is that I've used apps all day long. And I've been online all day long, but I haven't actually been browsing the internet. So apps are a big deal. And this trend is driving one of the largest, fastest shifts in consumer behavior that we've ever had since the 1960s. And it's not going anywhere. That's the direction it's going. So I have some stats on the screen here. 250 million people, 235 million of them have a mobile phone. And last I checked, if you were to walk into a Sprint, AT&T, or T-Mobile store, they don't even have those little clamshell flip phones anymore. It's all smart. So that's the direction it's going. And in the early 2000s, we started hearing this word, SaaS. It's not meant to describe, a teenager. It's software as a service. So a SaaS model came out in the early 2000s. It was part of the dot-com bubble burst. There was a lot of software as a service-based companies. Unfortunately, at that time, the data network wasn't there to support these kind of products. Now it is, so SaaS is back. And software as a service, in some ways, is really cloud. But cloud is a lot more sexy, especially when it comes to investors. So the cloud-based services or software as a service is something that's been pushed for over a decade now, and now it finally has the traction to really start making a difference. So I contend that just like me, most of you are already heavily using cloud computing today. So how many of you check your bank account, maybe transfer money? Cloud computing. Use Google Maps, AdWords, or Analytics. Gmail, Google Chrome, also cloud computing. How many of you use Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter? Cloud computing. And some of you are probably also running applications like a CRM, that's a customer relations management portal, SurveyMonkey, online stores like Dropbox, maybe you have an online shopping cart for your website, or QuickBooks Online. That's also cloud. These are applications that you're all using probably during using a web browser. And some of you may also be using things like Hosted Exchange, Office 365. It's all cloud computing. So my point is that you're already, in fact, heavily using cloud computing. But are you being smart and strategic about it? The cloud, there's 3 key things that I've identified that will help you understand how to use the cloud correctly. This is going to help. This falls into that whole strategic discussion. Now, number one, the ability to remove geography from the business. What this means is that you can have many endpoints to your business, such as remote offices, salespeople, temporary locations, or the like, and employees need to have full access to all of the company's records and applications. And this concept is one of the main drivers behind mobile computing, because the operational costs to do this using the cloud is far less than having it in-house. But the most value, and this is important, the most value it gives businesses is the flexibility and agility that you need in order to stay relevant. Now, that's my first key, removing geography. Number two, the mobile, this new mobility means that your organization can operate being device agnostic. This essentially means that all the applications that a company needs to do business can be packaged or accessed on almost any device. And this is important because some things are better done on tablets, other things are better done on smartphones, and then again, still others need a full desktop or a mobile laptop. And number three, mobile and cloud computing decisions should be made after a thorough, high-level strategic discussion. And this discussion should be taking place at the C-level and not implemented as an uncoordinated, unintentional mess of ad hoc, of adding devices, technologies, permissions, and so on. So I want to make sure we get through everything, so I'm kind of going to fly through some of these slides, just recapping why so many businesses are choosing mobile and cloud. Less hardware costs, device agnostic, lowers your IT costs, gives you the access you need to access your applications from anywhere, and you pay for just what you use for it. Now, of course, recapping some more, makes it incredibly easy to work and be productive when traveling. So that trip to Las Vegas, you can still do work while you're there. And mobile devices are cheaper, and companies are also opting towards this bring your own device or BYOD model. For example, some of the real estate offices I've come across, they require realtors to bring their own device. That lowers the overall cost of the organization. The realtors take better care of the device, so they're not replacing them all the time. And what I want to share with you in this next section is the best ways I feel to learn to use the cloud in your organization is to hear how others have done it. Now, I respect the privacy of our clients, so I've left out their names and contact info, but if you are interested in who they are, contact me directly, and I'll ask if it's okay to put you two in touch. So I really want to share what we've done for our clients to help move, touch, and inspire you to use the cloud to improve your own business. And for starters, we've worked with several service companies, and they've all seemed to have the same problem. They have too much paper. So they have remote employees and office staff. They use paper tickets, they use forms, they use Outlook Calendar, Word, Excel, QuickBooks. Some are even using Google Apps, but not very effectively, and they're running around with old phones. And that usually means triple or quadruple redundancy. They have data that's in paper in one place and in data in another place. It's just too much. So the customers were getting incorrectly charged, papers were being lost, and that ended up in a lot of lost revenue, not just in incoming checks and incoming payments, but it also was a huge time hole. So we've worked with them to consolidate data and eliminate paperwork, and that's usually done through installing a cloud-based CRM. And we've done a few of these. There's different vendors out there. They're usually industry specific. But these software solutions all kind of do the same thing. They allow employees to work remotely, and they use laptops and iPads to do this. And the typical savings for the organization, the ROI is about 60 days. So what that means is whatever they spent to put this implementation in, they save that within 2 months, and that saved thousands in fat finger charges just overnight. I saw this happen numerous times, and that's all just from changing the way that they think and implementing this stuff. So think about this. If your organization has several pieces of paper with the same customer information on it, you can benefit from the cloud and look for a software vendor that can offer you a cloud-based solution that can take these the triple or quadruple redundancy pieces of paperwork that you're currently spending too much time on and put it all into the cloud and make it accessible from anywhere. Other types of companies that we've worked with are CPA firms, construction and design firms, and architecture firms, nonprofits, and they all seem to have these old servers. And the old servers, they're great, and maybe they bought them 5 to 10 years ago, and that's about the maximum expected lifespan of a server. But by the time they reach end of life, they're probably like an old car. They require a lot of maintenance, and all they're really using it for is a central place to store and share files. And they want to have all these files somewhere backed up, and they needed something that would allow them to do that. So we used actually these Netgear servers. They allow us to do that very easily. They don't have to deal with physical backups such as external drives, thumb drives, and DVDs. Typically, a lot of these organizations also are running older versions of Microsoft Office. You see, the last one we just did was an XP upgrade, so they've been running Microsoft Office since 2000. So it was just very old, and that they didn't really need to push to upgrade. But the older file formats are less and less accepted. There's some new templates they wanted to take advantage of, so upgrading their versions of the software was really important. And not to mention, older versions of Microsoft Office do not work on newer versions of the Windows operating system. So we migrated them to Microsoft's Office 365 for email and software licenses. So Microsoft Office 365 allows you to not only get the service, but allows you to upgrade the software on a regular basis. We use these Netgear maintenance-free servers. They're essentially toaster ovens. They got a bunch of drives in there, and that's it. You don't have to do anything. And we install like this hybrid cloud solution. So these Netgear servers can store the data and also store it in the cloud as a backup. And when you kind of add that up, this came out to roughly $14,760 on IT savings costs in year one, and that resulted in about $44,280 in savings over the course of 3 years. A different case study that we can look at is medical and legal practices. I've worked with medical and legal practices. They've had similar challenges. They use either a legacy medical EMR, which is an electronic medical record system, or they use a medical billing system, and they have a legal document storage system. So they're all industry-specific, proprietary, require a server, and so on. Now, the cost of upgrading the software from a legacy software is extremely expensive. And what typically happens, especially in the medical industry, is that they'll jump on an EMR, and every 2 years that EMR will get sold. And so it gets sold to GE or it gets sold to someone else. And now, they're running something that's maybe 2 or 3 versions behind, and the cost to upgrade that is huge, even though the software physically works. But what they have, the challenge is that even though the software works, the physical equipment that it's on is failing. It's just getting old. So aging physical equipment, and that results in imminent hardware failure, and that's what makes them really nervous. So what we've done for them was we virtualized these systems, so you can take a computer and essentially clone it, kind of like what's the best way to put this? Kind of like a sci-fi movie. You can take something and copy an entire server as is, and you can put that into either another physical piece of equipment, or you can put it into the cloud. And so we've done both, and the idea of putting it into the cloud, now they don't have to deal with all that imminent hardware failure. They don't have to go through the software licensing upgrade, and we averaged it out. One of them was over $90,000, and between these different offices we worked with, they've come out with an average savings of about $61,900 in upgrade fees and $13,200 in annual software licensing fees, because of course the newer versions of the software, they want an annual fee for that. We've also worked with retail and manufacturing, and these types of companies deal with high traffic and hazardous environments, and employees, they want to give their employees access to company files, email, and internet websites, because they need them to post things on social media. They need to upgrade the maps. They need to do things that require the internet, but they cannot store important files on premise. And the reason for that is, of course, if you're in a retail situation, which has happened, someone comes in at gunpoint, steals equipment, that data, that customer data, now is lost, right? So storing it on site was not an option. Desktop computers, of course, require a lot of maintenance, and to have some sort of crash cart IT service running around between retail stores is not a good alternative. So we did these things called cloud tops. And these are systems. We replace the systems with solid-state, no moving parts terminals. These are the kinds you see at hospitals and banks. Employees could connect to a bank of servers in the cloud, and then they work as if they were using a regular desktop computer, but of course there's nothing on the physical device. And when we made these migrations in the past, average savings was about $26,910 on IT costs, because of course a lot of them were paying for this crash cart IT cost, and they're replacing computers pretty regularly. Particularly in manufacturing, computers just don't last that long because there's just a lot of dust and metal particulate in the air. Total savings was about $80,730 over a 3-year time frame. Now, of course, the last slide I'd like to share, the last kind of case study, is us. Now, we needed a way to monitor our customers' computers remotely so that we can do proactive security updates, prevent virus outbreaks, make sure that their backups are working every night. And so we found a cloud-based provider that sells a tool that allows us to do this part of the equation. So we can provide a daily safety check now for clients, and it shows them the overall health of their entire network, and then we fix small things before they become big things. Now the key that I want to share with you on this is that the cloud is also a platform for software vendors. So other guys out there who see your need, who see your pain, can create a software program and plot in the cloud, and then you can take that new product and you can use that to improve your own products and services. That's really important, because the cloud now becomes a resource for you to go out and find a solution for your pain. Now, this is the another exciting part of our slide is our presentation. Another question we get often asked about is the types of mobile devices or equipment that their companies should use to make the most out of using the cloud for work. Now, you probably want to use an iPad or a smartphone or some other device to work remotely. So let me briefly go over the types of mobile devices we recommend and why. Now, of course, everyone's excited about the iPhone. It arrives this Friday, and it's got an all-new design. It's got a, kind of like the seamless blend of aluminum in the back and then glass in the front. If you see any of the LGs, like the LG G3 is kind of the same manufacturing method. And everyone feels good about iPhone. They're used to its interface. It is the fastest iPhone yet. It's going to be in 2 different sizes, 4.7, 5.5. The 4.7 you can pre-order. I know Best Buy is taking pre-orders on that, as well as most of the mobile phone carriers. The iPhone 6 Plus, that one's a bigger screen. That one I don't believe they're pre-ordering, so you may have to camp out for that one. And if you're an Apple fanatic, all the power to you. Go ahead, camp out. You can get yourself the new iPhone. Has the same resolution camera, although it's supposed to have a little bit better photo processing. It's going to be running iOS 8, but in my experience, whenever Apple pushes out a operating system update, they do it on all devices. So you're going to see that iOS 8 probably in the next few months on your existing iPhone 5 or on your iPad. It's going to make its way over. And of course, iPhone 6 now has standardized the fingerprint authentication, so you can unlock the phone, make purchases. Nothing new, but still a fun feature. You can keep your kids out of the App Store and keep them from buying things. So maybe that was the whole point behind making it. Ultrabooks are great. Now, Ultrabooks it's a category of computers. The idea is that PC users are kind of trapped in this gap. They like all these mobile devices and gadgets, but they travel to different locations. And Ultrabooks address the concerns of having more power than just a mobile device and being able to actually work on it. Now, Ultrabooks, they're really characterized by being able to wake up in a flash, run for hours, and have a full-on keyboard and have the ability to operate more as a tablet and as a laptop. So the idea is that these devices run traditional business software and Windows and still have that huge battery life that you like with having a mobile device. Now, most of you probably felt that Microsoft had lost their mind when you first used Windows 8. There was no more start menu, there was just a bunch of tiles, there's this charm bar on the right-hand side of the screen, what the heck, but you should know that Microsoft made Windows 8 with Ultrabooks in mind. They wanted it extremely powerful, touchscreen laptops that are used for long-term work and play. For example, I can use my iPad to check and respond to most of my emails, but for those 5 to 10% of my emails where I need to type more than a few sentences, I need a keyboard. And the Ultrabook, it fits the bill. The last recommendation I have, and this is better for retail, hospitality, manufacturing, is thin clients. Now, what thin clients are is they give you kind of that full desktop functionality. I mentioned in a few slides back about some of the things that we've done for our manufacturers and retailer clients. But the idea is that these little boxes have a 7 to 10 year lifespan, so they last a really long time. They have no moving parts. And because they tie into the cloud for a desktop environment and to do regular productivity, your employees can literally, you can walk and plop your employees. So they can pick up from one desk, move over to the front of the office, and they're there. They can continue working where they left off. The idea is, I see this in environments where employers want to kind of, maybe this is a little bit harsh, but they want to chain their employee to a desk. They want them to sit there and do what they need to do, supervise them. Sometimes, retail makes the most sense for those kind of things, but they still want to give them the functionality of a full desktop without having to pay for the interruptions of IT crash card service. So thin clients are great. They have no upgrade costs because obviously all those upgrades happen in the cloud. Backup costs are nil because those, everything is being backed up in the cloud as well. You got that portable OS access, so you're walking and plopping your employees. The only downside is that there is a relatively high capital investment. So depending on whether you push this into a server farm or if you cloud source some of the software, outside the cost of the actual equipment, which each of these thin clients costs roughly the same as a desktop computer, you may have some licensing costs associated with that. So the big players you're going to see in the next few years is VMware. They've been around a number of years doing this. Citrix, many of you know and love, we're actually using Citrix technology right now to do this GoToWebinar. And Microsoft's Azure platform, which is hosted desktop access. Now, no one's really doing hosted desktop access very well today, but I would expect that to change in the next few years. Moving along, we have the dangers of mobile and cloud computing. And, now we get to the dark side of the cloud, the rainy side, so to speak, because the truth of the matter is it's not all sunshine and roses in cloud computing. I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Here we go. Well, one of the things that we're going to see when this slide pops, ambulance chaser attorneys. Now, if your if your employee is a non-exempt hourly wage worker, so that employee is just checking their emails after hours and you don't compensate them, then you may be in violation of employment laws. So we're starting to see some cases like this come up. This one in particular is from the Huffington Post. It happened last year out of Chicago. But just be aware, if you have salaried employees, that's one thing, but hourly employees checking email, especially on their own personal device, company email, that could be an issue. Now we also have, this next slide is from something unfortunate that happened. We had there was a Coca-Cola truck driver who was on his cell phone, and that was, I believe, his personal cell phone. He was taking a personal call while driving a truck. He hit a lady, and she didn't make it. So Coca-Cola had to pay $21 million because they were the ones liable for the actions of that employee. So the key is this. If your employees are driving and talking on the cell phone or doing anything that's work-related, you're liable for their actions. Be careful of that. We also have malware as being a growing concern. Now when the Google Play Store, it used to be called Google Marketplace, launched in 2011, there are only roughly 800 instances of malware. So that is software that has a malicious intent that ends up onto your mobile device. That number has jumped to around 37,000 in 2012. It's doubled every year since then, so it keeps on going up. Just be aware that in the Apple App Store, they do vet their software vendors before being posted onto their market for sale, and Google doesn't really do such a great job of that. And of course, 70% of all mobile devices are Android-based. That's going to become a challenge for you if all of your employees are jumping onto the Google Play Store, picking up apps that may have some malicious intent, and that device has something that's company related on there, such as email, files, or access. Now, there's something called HIPAA, which is Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. If you are in medicine, you're probably well familiar with this. This article here is from a Tennessee firm. You know, there was a laptop actually that was stolen, and you know, that data was not encrypted on the stolen laptop. And even though they recovered the laptop, even though they found the thief, and even though none of that data actually made it out into the world, they were still fined $50,000, and that was because they didn't encrypt it, they didn't safeguard that data from the potential problem that could have happened from having that data out there in the world. So just be aware of that. You know, this kind of stuff you're going to see more and more of this in the news over the coming years. And of course, the next one, this is something that we've seen a lot of over the past year in particular. You're probably going to see more of this coming into the holiday season. It started last holiday season. It's something called ransomware. Ransomware essentially is software that jumps onto your laptop or mobile device and holds a ransom until you give them money. So we've seen the CryptoLocker, which is it encrypts the file system and says you got to pay us $1,500 or $3,000, and if you don't, all your files on your computer are going to be deleted. Maybe not so bad if you just have pictures and photos on there and some homework, but if you have a company data with client data on there, that's a big problem. We see the FBI Money Pack virus. I won't get into that, but it's some kind of thing. It holds your computer ransom and wants you to give them money to let it go. Now, the bottom line is that you need an up-to-date mobile device policy for your business. In fact, you should also have an acceptable use policy called an AUP in place if your employees are not using mobile devices. But if they are, the stakes are even higher, since these devices, they're easy to lose or get stolen, and employees are more likely to download games, pictures, and just generally use the device for personal reasons. And you know, your mobile device policy, you know, let me just tell you what it should look like. You can start with these questions and come up with good answers for each of them, then write it down. Now, this is part of the, you know, kind of jumping forward about 30 seconds, this is part of our acceptable use policy and mobile device policy download that you can get at the end of this presentation. I'll get to that. But a written policy should include who owns the device. Obviously, do you want to allow employees to bring their own devices to work? What websites and applications can your employees access on the device? Are they permitted to download games? Can employees use the device for personal use? And if so, how and when? That's time dependent, and where. So location and time. If the device is stolen, who pays for the replacement? What data and information may the employee have on the device itself? Can they take pictures of themselves on a Saturday night, or can they not? Can an employee legally work after hours? There's strict rules also around employees using the device while driving or operating machinery. That ties back to my Coca-Cola example from earlier. And of course, strict rules specifying that employees may not jailbreak or root the device. This is something that if you have a fairly techie person in the office, they're going to try to do it. And there's a million YouTube videos out there that tell employees how, or I'm sorry, tell people how they can take their device and unlock features that the manufacturer has locked down for them. That's to protect the device and protect it from hackers and other things that are known vulnerabilities of the operating system. Jailbreaking it or rooting it allows you to circumvent that. So don't do it. And of course, you should also have written rules detailing what employees must do if the device is lost or stolen. Report it immediately. And not to mention, if it is lost or stolen, are you paying for it? Now, you know, in my experience, I've never worked with an organization where employees were told to comply and they just did forever. Over time, behaviors kind of tend to go back the way they were, and the company is once again put back at risk. Now, the only way to avoid this is to put metaphorical locks on the doors to enforce your policies, because if an employee violates them, you're still going to suffer and pay the consequences. And some of these examples of these locks on the door are security protections, so putting strong PIN codes to unlock the devices, a remote kill switch if the device is lost or stolen, there's several software vendors out there that do this kind of stuff, monitoring software and content filtering. That means that if they're going on the device to a site that may have some malicious software sneak its way onto the device, you want to be able to block that. You want to be able to back up the device. We have some clients who use their mobile devices to take pictures of remote jobs. Where is that data stored? And if that data is lost, what do you do about it? Device tracking. Of course, we're having this big South Shore swell. Is your rep currently on a sales call, or is he catching big surf? There's only one way to know. And of course, this is just the beginning. We haven't had a lot of time to go through stuff. I've given you an outline of what you need to be aware of, pros and cons, but this is a bigger conversation. There's a lot more questions you need to think about here. So, think about this. Are you facing a network refresh? Should you consider cloud? Is an on-premise server the best way to go? Something in between. There's a hybrid option that really works. There's several hybrid options that work well here in Hawaii, and it just really depends on your business. Is your network really secure? How protected are you from hacker attacks, rogue employees, viruses, or numerous other threats? And are your employees educated regularly on security best practices? Because yes, they do change. Now, do you have enforcement policies in place? How about all of your most important files, your data, your systems? Are they being backed up? How fast could you recover them if you needed to? And are you making the most cost-effective decisions regarding your IT hardware, your software, or are you just throwing money away? No one likes to throw money away, especially me, and I hate to see you do the same. So one thing that I want to do is, at the end, obviously, we're going to give you the free consultation. We're going to go through where are you. We're going to figure out there's 3 steps we're going to go through. What's lacking, what's making it tough for you to work, what applications do you need, where are you exposed to risk. We're going to go through where you want to be able to do. So we're going to go through, this is a business conversation, specific objectives you'd like to reach and to see if technology is a way to get there. And of course, third step is laying out that roadmap. What's the most effective and efficient way to reach those business goals while at the same time staying within your budget and being smart about it. So, we're going to make an action plan for upgrading your network where appropriate, of course. We'll create a contingency plan for staff augmentation, for change in business size and scope. This happens all the time. And of course, we create a business continuity plan, and that usually uses the cloud to keep your event running or your organization running in the event that you have some sort of natural disaster. So, of course, I promised you at the beginning, and thank you for hanging on. For everyone who does sign up for this, will receive a mobile device policy template you can easily customize and start using in your business today. It's free. I'm going to give you the link in just a moment, but you should really know something, that I can only work with a few, just a few businesses here, so I can only extend this to 8 people. So please only sign up if you are truly, genuinely serious about me being more strategic with your business technology, and don't sign up if you're just mildly curious. So there's an application process. I want to make sure that number 1, I can help you, and that number 2, that there's some information I'll need to get about you and your organization before we schedule the first meeting. That's going to help me prepare for our time together and make the meeting as productive as possible. Now, we went through over here the different cloud questions, and if you had any questions, of course, I see there were some questions that came in. I have a question here from Chemo, and I know we just have 2 minutes left, so we're going to talk about that. Let's see. The question from Chemo is, if I store my company data in the cloud, how can I make sure that it doesn't get stolen by a hacker? One thing you should know about cloud backup, and this is actually an important point, is that there's this kind of best effort data protection. And if you go to any of the big cloud backup providers, you're going to see this on kind of dig deep in there in their terms of service. And like Carbonite, for example. You can go to Carbonite, and Carbonite will say, this is just the best effort data protection. We're going to do our best reasonably to protect your data out there because of course, it is a network that has many nodes of entry. We have to do our best to try to protect your information. So there's always risk, but typically a good backup provider, what they do is they encrypt the data beforehand, and then they send it from your computer or your server out into the cloud. So even if the data is stolen, it usually can't be decoded and used for malicious intent. So we've gotten very good with encryption. Military-grade encryption was a big hot word maybe about 10 years ago. Now it's just the industry standard. Everyone uses military-grade encryption, and what that means is that the data takes very long to decrypt if it does get taken. There is some issues in terms of geography with this. Some private cloud data storage networks, such as Carbonite, extend across our borders, so they may have data centers out in Canada, and if those servers are compromised, you don't have that kind of U.S. protection that allows you to to seek retribution for your lost files. So hopefully, Kimo, that answers your question. Thank you very much. Now, Ronaldin, I see we're at the top of the hour, and I respect the time of our listeners and of our viewers. So thank you very much for your time. My name again is Attila Suresh. I'm with SOS Tech Solutions. And Ronaldin, is there any closing remarks you'd like to make? I guess not. Well, maybe we've lost her. But maybe I can keep on going. Ronaldin? All right. Well, I hope I haven't been talking to myself for the past 45 minutes. I don't think I have. I think everyone's gotten a good use out of this. All right, guys. I have some good shared questions here. I'm going to keep on going until Ronaldin interrupts me because I do have another one from Nani. It says here, Nani, our internet is unreliable and frequently drops at our office. Going to the cloud means that we wouldn't be able to work, right? Well, my answer is yes and no. So typically, Hawaii small businesses prefer to use like this hybrid cloud approach. So there's a physical copy of their files right there in the office and a backup copy off in the cloud. So they can continue to operate while the internet is being fixed, because typically it's not down forever. It's just down for a little, maybe a few hours. And they can keep working, and then their files are securely for like a rainy day. You like that pun, I bet. So the idea is that the files that are that are stored in the cloud as their backup, that is available as a plan B. Now, the good thing is that if you use some of these cloud service providers, such as Office 365, or if you have Google Apps, or even QuickBooks Online, you can take your mobile device and bring out your iPad, and your iPad now has access to your QuickBooks, so you can keep on working. So even if Hawaiian Tel or Oceanic is down, you can still bring out your T-Mobile or Verizon-powered iPad, keep on going. You can bring out your mobile phone, check and respond to emails, keep on going, and it makes you really portable. Now, of course, if the power's out, you're gonna have to suffer with a 10-hour battery life on an iPad. But some of these Ultrabooks are very cool. They have 8 to 10-hour battery lives. They're really there's a lot of things that we can do here. Let's see. I have another question here from Tony. She mentioned that we've had some trouble with the making our phone or iPad a hotspot. It doesn't seem to work very well. I tend to agree. It depends on the device. We've used iPad hotspots quite a bit. We're on a customer site and we have no internet. It seems to kind of go. It just depends on your carrier and depends on your signal strength. I found that the Apple-based hotspots work really well. The Android ones kind of don't. It really just depends on your service provider, where you are. But I guess the idea that I'm trying to leave you with is that you have a plan B. Obviously, you want to use your Oceanic signal. You want to use your Hawaiian Tel signal the best you can. And if it's not available, hey, at least you have a plan B. But if your power's out, your internet's out, and the phone starts ringing because you have clients to service, you're going to be very stressed out if you don't have some sort of plan B. And the cloud lets you get that. So I see Ronaldin is back on the line. Hey, Ronaldin, are you there? Well, I'm going to wrap it up over here, Ronaldin, if that's okay, because I know our clients probably do want to get going. So, of course, I just want to offer my gratitude to the Better Business Bureau for allowing me to help share what I know and to help move, touch, and inspire some participants into doing something with the cloud to help improve their business. And I think we are good. Thanks, guys. Have a great week.